It is the 2nd of August, Sunday the 2nd, and I've had quite a few requests and questions over the last couple of years since I had done my original Trex staircase video, and people consistently get hung up on how to cut the left stringer. And the reason that the left stringer wrap in particular is a conundrum is you're trying typically to cut everything from the back. So I don't have any Trex with me, but I thought I would try to handle this and show people how to do this using what I have. So this is a piece of 1x12 spruce. I hit one side with white and the other side is bare wood. So we're going to treat this white face as the finished side of the Trex wrap that you're attempting to turn into your stringer wrap. And the back side here is going to be the back side of your Trex. So just think of it that way. So I've already done some layout on this so that I wasn't wasting video time going through all that. But in essence, we have our left stringer. I've got it laid out. This is just a 7-11. You can see the layout lines on here. So you've got the tread, your run and your rise, or your riser here. And your tread is flat cut. You're not 45ing that, but you are 45ing the riser. And the reason that this becomes a conundrum for people is circular saws only cut a bevel one way. So here I've got my Bosch circular saw, and that's the bevel. Okay, so people want to come in here. Let me lower the camera a little bit. So people are approaching this and trying to figure, well, how do we cut this riser, because we can't get the saw to work. So I'm going to give you a few quick options, and I'll show you my saw function last. Okay, the first option, I'll float out there, is the jigsaw. So if you have a better quality jigsaw, nowadays I think most of them tend to have the feature or the function of being able to bevel both directions. So we can come into a project like this where we want to 45. We want to 45 that riser, and this will get us there. Okay, so there's our 45-degree cut for that riser in the spruce. Now, the reason I'm not fond of the jigsaw for this, it's an option I'm throwing out there, but jigsaws are notoriously hard to keep a straight line with. They're just not cut out for that. The blades are narrow, they wander. So this is not an option I recommend, but it's an option I'm putting out there. It is one method of doing this. Obviously, you have good old-fashioned hand saws. Also, a good option, but if you're doing a large staircase, if you're doing a really large staircase, that can be a hindrance as well, because that's a lot of hand sawing, and Trex is not exactly an easy product to cut. It doesn't cut. It cuts well, but it doesn't cut quite as easily as wood does. So we have that option, and that works really well if you have a good sharp handsaw. With the Trex, tear out's not really too bad of a problem, but again, not 100% optimal because you will have a degree of tear out, and obviously, if you're inexperienced with a handsaw, it can be a little tricky to get that precise. So, the circular saw method that I use in particular, we'll flip my Trex wrap upside down. And I keep saying Trex, but this is the same principle for any product. So I did some cedar ones that are also up on YouTube just last year, and I built those the same way, and strictly cedar visible. So here we have the 45 is coming this way. This is the way the riser needs to be mitered, and the circular saw won't do that from this direction. So what you end up having to do is dropping your saw into the cut. Okay, so what I'm doing, let me zoom in here on this cut. So what I've done is I've set my blade 45, and I've set it to the depth of the material that I'm intending to cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make absolute sure that my front heel of the saw is resting on the wood. It's very important. You can't be rocking, and you don't want to be raised at all because it's gonna kick back. That's the last thing you want to be doing. But what I do is I get my front heel set in there, firm grip on the saw, and I line up with my miter. And I drop my cut in like that. So that blade is terrible, so don't mind the smoke. Use a good sharp blade. Okay. And I overset my 45, so don't worry about that. You can see, let me zoom camera out here. So you can see I'm just a little bit outside my line, but that was intentional. I just threw the saw onto my max 45 setting, which I actually have set proud, and the idea behind that is I always have that little bit of extra, and then I can always come back and trim it off. But set your saw to true 45, and that'll land you right on that line. And then what I do is I come through, and as long as you're lining up, as long as you're lining up and stopping your cut about 3/4 of an inch past your vertical, so this is your tread, this is your run right here, I can take that saw and I can kerf it back about 3/4 of an inch back, and that will get you really close to all the way through on this side without overcutting, because you don't want to overcut and have a saw kerf here below your tread. So that's it. One other technique, which is self-explanatory, is a chop saw. The only reason I'm not going to bother trying to show you with a chop saw is it's pretty self-explanatory. But it's, if you're cutting a 12-foot staircase, a 12-foot stringer, and you're trying to handle that, especially when you get to the end of it on a chop saw, it can be really, it's pretty tough if you're an average person out there. Without a really nice saw stand, etc. So I don't personally cut mine with the chop saw. I do all my work by hand with the tools that I have, and that's that. So let's see. There was one other question that I did get, and I'm going to answer that now as well. So I've had a few people ask me why they're always having a problem with their bottom tread. Now this gets into some stair math, so I'm not going to get into any intricate stair math, but it's pretty simple. When you're cutting your stringers, what you have to remember is, so let's say this is a 7/11 stringer that we've laid out here, okay? So we've got a 7-inch rise right here, okay? 7-inch rise. And every one of these is 7 inches of rise. But what happens on the first step is that you are gaining, so if you cut the stringer itself to 7 inches here, so you got 7 inches, okay? You're adding an inch of tread if you're using a 1-inch decking, composite decking. So that means you're going to have an 8-inch rise on your first step. After that, everything's identical. You're adding a tread to every riser after that. To every step's getting a tread, so you're picking up the same. So everything staircases identically. But your first tread, you always need to back off the amount of material that you're going to add for your tread. So in this case, we would be adding a 1-inch composite decking. So we would actually cut the stringer 6 inches here. Now the rest of these are going to be true 7s, but the first one's going to be a 6. When we add that 1 inch of decking here, then we're going to end up with that 7-inch rise we're looking for, and the rest of them work out that way because we're adding an inch here and an inch here, so you're getting the identical step off as you go up. So anyway, that's my quick video. I've had this request a lot. This is why I don't like the jigsaw. It wanders, and I didn't throw a sharp blade on there intentionally. I wanted to be able to show you the outcome. Jigsaw can be real finicky. When and if I do use one, I make sure I have an extremely sharp brand new blade on it, and I change them out frequently, because the minute they dull, they start dragging and pulling out of plane, and that's it. I mean, you cut one of these wrong and it's done. You can't go back and repair it. So this circular saw method for me is the tried and true way to go. It's really important that you have a good control of your circular saw. Good, because safety is number one. So you need to have a really good handle on using a circular saw. One thing I would actually recommend is worm drive saws are quite a bit heavier, but I find they're easier to control. So take that with a grain of salt if not everybody has a worm drive saw. But for something like this, where you're dropping into a cut, it's kind of nice. They're long. They're much longer than the short circular saw like I have, and it allows you to lay the nose on here and just kind of drop that cut in with more in-line control than, say, the 7 1/4 inch conventional circular saw. But if you're fine with a handsaw, I would use a handsaw all day long. It's there's our handsaw cut. It's good. And that saw I used to cut this with, that's actually my grandfather's old distance handsaw. It needs a sharpening, but I mean, that's a old 1940s distant handsaw, and still getting it done. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have any more questions, feel free to stick them in the comments, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video. If you've gotten through this video this far, if you've seen my shop video, I have been busy as a beaver in here, and there's a lot of stuff to show off, and I'm working on some content actually at the same time. So have a blessed Sunday, and I will see you guys on the next one.